And we are back with the fourth segment of the GSMC Basketball Podcast, brought to you by the GSMC Sports Network. And in this fourth segment, we're going to be looking at the power rankings going into this week. We do this every single week, so it's basically normal. Last week when we were doing the power rankings, I'll just go over the teams that were ranked last week and what I expect to be different going into these power rankings for this week. So the Nuggets and the Celtics, they were 1 and 2. I think that's going to stay the same. I think the Nuggets are going to stay at the 1 spot and the Boston Celtics are going to stay at the 2 spot. The Bucks were ranked 3rd, so I think that's going to drop. They're going to go all the way down to 4th, and with the Thunder clinching the playoffs, I think maybe the Thunder have a chance of moving back up into the top 3, and the Timberwolves were ranked 5th, so I think they're going to stay at the 5th spot. The Pelicans were ranked 6th. I think that's going to change. I think the Clippers are going to be ranked 6th, and the Pelicans are going to move down to let's say maybe the 10th spot at least, maybe even the 9th, but I think they're going to move down a lot. The Mavericks are going to move all the way up. Actually, no. The Clippers shouldn't be 6th. The Mavericks should be 6th going into these power rankings. And then underneath the Mavericks, so going to 7th, is going to be the Clippers. And then at 8 is the Phoenix Suns. I think the Phoenix Suns are going to stay at 8, like how they were in the last week, so we'll go ahead and check in on that. And then in the 9th spot, I said that the Pelicans were going to take that 9th spot, and the Knicks they were the 10th spot last week, so I think they're going to stay in that 10th spot. And they should be higher than the Cavs. They should, every single team in the Eastern Conference that's in the playoffs right now, from the Knicks and up, they should be higher than the Cavs, just because the Knicks, they've gotten better since they played the Cavs, and I just don't see the Cavs team just being better than the Knicks team. I just don't. Now, 11th was the Miami Heat. That was, if you paid attention on the previous time I did this, that was the only team that I had a problem with being ranked so high. I think they're going to move all the way down to maybe 15th or maybe even 17th at this rate. I do not think the Miami Heat are a team that should be that high in the power rankings, and I don't think they're a team that many people are scared of, despite the fact that they can make it to the playoffs and make it to the finals anytime. It seems like any time that they want. Even as an 8th seed, they made it to the finals. So, I'm still not afraid of them. The Cavs, they were ranked 12th in the power rankings last week. I think they're going to move up to 11th, so replacing the Miami Heat. Between the Cavs and the Kings, they're going to move either 11th or 12th. So I wouldn't be surprised if they flip-flop between both of those teams. Now, the Pacers were not in the top 15. I expect that to change in these power rankings. The Orlando Magic, they were the 14th team. I think they should be higher than the Miami Heat, but I don't think they're going to move from their standings. And the Lakers, they made a jump from 17 all the way up to 15. So I expect the hype around the Lakers to be at an all-time high, so the ratings are going to be, the rankings are going to be up for them. So we'll go ahead and see, and let me just go ahead and open up the power rankings right now. Here we are, and here's the articles, so we're going to look at them together. Luka's the thumbnail, so not surprised if the Mavericks, they end up moving up, like how I said. The Nuggets, they hold the 1 spot, as previously. Now, so should the Celtics. Yep, so the first 2 predictions, they were correct. And the third one is also correct. I predicted the Thunder were going to move up in the power rankings, and they did. The Timberwolves, they also moved up in the power rankings, so no surprises there. And yes, they replaced the Bucks that were, I thought the Bucks were going to be the 4th and the Timberwolves were going to be the 5th, but flip-flopping them, I guess it seems right considering how both of those teams clinched. So not really too far off on those predictions there. The Mavericks, I was right about the Mavericks moving all the way up to 6 and replacing the Pelicans, because the Mavericks, they've been winning these since All-Star break. They've been winning these teams. As you can see, they've won 11 of their last 12 games and 7 straight wins. That's the longest active winning streak in the league since beating the Houston Rockets, who had the 11-game winning streak. And with the winning in mind, that means that Luka Doncic has moved up in the MVP rankings. You saw that in the previous podcast where he moved up from being all the way down to the 4th spot all the way up to the 2nd spot. That is a huge jump in terms of MVP rankings. And it's almost like everyone knows that Luka's the best player in the league, but they can't give him the MVP because Dallas doesn't win as much. Now that they're winning, now it seems like the odds are more in Luka Doncic's favor. So the Pelicans, they ended up going in the 7th spot. So far, yeah, it's been more or less what I predicted. I didn't think they were going to take a huge drop, and they didn't. They only moved down 1. And I thought the Clippers were going to end up taking the 7th spot, but it looks like the Clippers ended up moving up 1, even though I thought that being in the 7th spot, like for the Clippers, it's a good enough ranking. But seeing as how the Pelicans, they've always beaten the Clippers every single time, I guess it makes sense ranking them higher than them, even though they don't have Brandon Ingram, which is why I thought that was going to be the difference maker. But looks like Phoenix, they ended up moving down in the rankings. They've stayed within that 8 or 9 spot. So again, their future and like their ceiling is a little bit uncertain. And the Knicks, they stay in the exact same spot like how I previously thought. So we'll go ahead and look at the rest of them. The Miami Heat didn't move once. Are you serious right now? You can't even see it. Here we go. The Miami Heat, they did not move a single ranking at all. They're the exact same ranking that they were last week, and I do not agree with that whatsoever. This team is incredibly overrated when it comes to playoff time because they just think the media just thinks that they can turn it on. And no, like that's not how it's going to work. Like they do not deserve to be ranked any higher anymore. Like, since last week, their wins have been against the Trailblazers and the Wizards. Like, obviously they're going to beat both of those teams. Both of those teams are bottom feeders in their respective conference. And I think the reason why they didn't really lose that much in the rankings is because they beat the Trailblazers by 60 points. Obviously, that's pretty impressive, but it's still the Trailblazers, and they lost to the Warriors, who are a play-in team in the Western Conference. They should have moved down, like at least one they should have moved down, because those wins, they just aren't impressive. Like, the Cavs, they should have flipped between the Cavs and the Heat, because even though the Cavs, they lost to the Heat on Sunday, the previous Sunday, it does not make sense to me. Like, not this Sunday, but the last Sunday. And it still doesn't make sense how the Miami Heat are ranked so high, meaning that the Kings are ranked even lower. The rankings haven't changed from the bottom. Why? The Kings are arguably a better team than the Miami Heat are. They have a lot better matchups. They have a much better center. And, Sabonis, he's in the MVP conversation, and De'Aaron Fox is the second option, yet some people consider him the best option on the team. Why are they ranked lower than the Miami Heat? I don't get it. It's literally only because of Jimmy Butler and, the playoff prowess that he has. No, that's not right. The Pacers, they ended up moving up, so I guess the Lakers, they didn't change whatsoever. Yeah, that does not make any sense to me because the Lakers, they ended up beating the Pacers in their previous matchup, so it does not make sense to me how the Lakers are ranked lower than the Pacers, especially considering how many points they allowed the Lakers to score on them. I mean, 150 points scored on you, that is a lot of points. And now, Golden State, they make it all the way up to the 16 spot, so they jump from 19 all the way up to 16. For those of you listening to the audio side, you have no idea what I just did, but I basically just smacked my head in disbelief because the Orlando Magic are 17th. Somehow, they're ranked lower than the Golden State Warriors and the Lakers. Why? They're literally a 5th seed in the Eastern Conference. Why are they ranked so low? That does not make any sense. These standings, did they just give up towards the end of 12? I don't agree with that whatsoever. I think those standings are very bad. And I'm just going to look at the schedule real quick. And the Magic, they lost to the Clippers, so that's a better team than what the Miami Heat lost to on Friday. They played the Grizzlies, they beat the Grizzlies, and then they played the Trailblazers and they beat the Blazers. They also lost to the Warriors, unfortunately, and they lost to the Kings. So that's probably why they ended up tanking so badly, because of those losses to competitive teams. But the Miami Heat didn't do much better against those competitive teams. I don't understand why they're ranked higher. But I digress. So let's see, keep going down, and we get to Houston, and here is the other play-in team that has a chance of making it to the playoffs. But again, I don't really see Houston making it all the way, so I think 18 is a respectable spot for them. We'll see if they can continue winning, but it doesn't really look like it. Now the Sixers, they're ranked 19th. They should have been ranked 19th a long time ago, considering how they were playing without Joel Embiid. But I feel like this ranking is fair for them. The Hawks are ranked 20th. Again, relatively fair. The Bulls, 21. After that win against the Hawks, it makes sense why the Hawks are... No, after that win that the Hawks had against the Chicago Bulls, it makes sense how they're ranked higher. And the rest of the teams are bottom feeders. So every other team that's under the Brooklyn Nets, bottom feeding team. Not really a team that's expected to do much, especially the Spurs. They were the first team ever to get eliminated from playoff contention. So not sure why they're ranked so much higher, probably because of Victor Wembanyama and his performances. But again, bunch of bottom-feeding teams. Not the Portland Trailblazers being the worst team, worse than the Pistons, is actually very surprising. But losing by 60 points yet again is definitely not going to help you in the rankings. So again, all of these rankings, they sort of make sense, except for when you get into that mid area where you look at the Miami Heat and you're thinking, why are they even in the top 11? They should not be in the top 11. Like, if you ask me personally, I don't think these rankings are good enough. Like, I really don't think the Heat should be there. They just shouldn't. And they get way too much credit for being able to go far in the playoffs, because one of which could argue, like, well, you could make the argument that both of those playoff appearances are a little bit fluky. Like, you might not, like, saying that out loud, it's like, it's a little bit odd, because it's like, how could a team that made the finals in 2020 and then made it again a few years later, how could that be a fluke? And like, with this Miami Heat team, it's like, I don't really know if you could call it a fluke, so might have to amend that statement right there saying that it was fluky. But a lot of these wins, it sort of seems like they shouldn't really happen, and that sort of culture of them winning games when they're underdogs have sort of overtaken the media, and it seems like they're giving credit a little bit earlier than they should. Like, I'm not going to deny that the Miami Heat have a huge possibility of being able to make it out of the first round, but they haven't even made it out of the first round yet. So the rankings shouldn't take that into account because it hasn't happened yet. And I feel like that's sort of what the media does as well, because it's like, whenever it comes close to playoff time, everyone thinks playoff Jimmy Butler. And I'm like, the playoffs haven't even started yet, and we're not even sure if the Miami Heat are going to be a legitimate threat like how they were in the previous season. Because, again, there's still the chance that they could lose in the first round or even get swept in the first round like how they've done in previous years. When they went up against the Bucks, they lost 4-0, and a lot of people thought that series was going to be a lot more competitive, but Jimmy Butler didn't show up. And Luna Emily in the chat. What's up, Luna? But yeah, so it's like, this team is sort of like, it's a wild card team where it's like you have no idea what their ceiling is and you have no idea what their lowest point could be, because when they went in 2020, they made it all the way to the finals, and then in 2021 they ended up losing in the first round, and then 2022 they ended up losing in Game 7 to the Boston Celtics. But then they ended up beating the Boston Celtics right after that and advanced to the NBA Finals. Emily asked how I'm doing. I'm doing well. How about you? And it's like this thought process of like them being able to like win these games. It's sort of like, since they've done it 3 out of the last 4 years, it's somewhat expected of them to like, okay, they don't really try hard in the regular season. They turn it on in the playoffs. And I don't think that thought process is good enough for a team to be ranked as high as they are, because again, hasn't happened yet, so we might just be overhyping them. And usually, if we look at the common trend, when we overhype a team, they end up doing a lot worse than what everyone expects. So it might be the pressure that might get to them. And Luna Emily asks, how long have I been streaming? Well, I've been doing this stream for about an hour, but as a whole, in terms of streaming, I think it's been, I'd say about like 4 months maybe, around that time, 4-5 months, something around that. But yeah, that's how long I've been streaming for, and that's how long I've been doing this podcast. And regardless, like the Miami Heat, they've it seems like I always want to get back to the topic of discussion whenever a comment comes up. But again, it's like they get overhyped, and I don't agree with them getting overhyped because these tournaments, these matchups, they haven't happened yet, and we don't even know who they're going to be playing in the first round. So the hype might end up being for nothing, because if they lose in the first series of the play-in and they end up playing the Boston Celtics, I don't think they're going to make it against the Celtics. Emily says, can I ask something? I mean, yeah, you can go ahead and ask. I'll see if I can answer. But the Celtics team that is not the same team that they ended up playing the previous few years, and they almost lost in 7 games going up against that Boston Celtics team. So it's like a lot of these teams, they've definitely improved, and the Miami Heat, they aren't one of those teams that I feel made that big jump of improvement, like how the Boston Celtics made a jump in improvement. And that's sort of like teams that haven't gotten better in the offseason. I don't really understand how they expect to match up against other teams who have gotten better, because it's not the same team that they went up against. Like, a lot of people are not ambitious, but like they're optimistic that the Cavs have what it takes to beat the New York Knicks. But the Cavs team hasn't changed from the last year, and they ended up losing 4-1. This Knicks team ended up getting better since the last year. So what's the logic in thinking that the Knicks team can't do it again? Because they already done it previously, and they've gotten better since then. But that's sort of like the question. That's sort of the thought process and things of that nature. So Emily says that she does custom artwork for the streamers to enhance their streaming experience. I mean, that's not really a question. That's more of like a statement. So, like, I don't really know how I can help you with that. And she asked, would I like anything to be made for my channel? I think I'm relatively good. If I do, then I'll let you know. But I think right now I'm good where I'm at, just because, like, I mean, I think the system that I have right now is fine the way it is, because it's really just like me talking about basketball. There doesn't really need to be any sort of flashy artwork going around. But again, I have no idea. We'll see. And it's not just me that makes these decisions on what we do. It's like a whole team decision on what gets done, and I don't really have a say in that. So can't really say much about that. My bad if you were looking for an opportunity, but you're gonna have to find it elsewhere. Unless one of the higher-ups sees you in the comments and is like, let's see what this person's talking about. But not entirely sure. Can't really help you on that. But with that, we are out of time for this final segment, and that is the end of the podcast. So thank you so much for tuning into GSMC Basketball Podcast, presented by the GSMC Sports Network. Your support means a lot to us, so please remember to subscribe to the show and leave a positive review. It really does make a difference. We also invite you to follow us on Facebook, Twitter, TikTok, and Instagram for more content and updates. As always, please use the link in the description to get your comments recognized, or the link displayed below the ticker on every single show segment. It is GSMCPodcast.net. Really helps the show, makes the show much more interactive between myself and you guys. Thank you once again. This is the end of the show. I am your host, Nelson, and as always, take care.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day. Yeah, I'm tired of shit, and the coffee ain't hit yet, damn, ain't that great.